Shutting down the nuclear research establishment at Dounreay involves more than cleaning up just the site itself. There's a legacy of contamination on the seabed and nearby beaches dating back almost 50 years to the operation of nuclear fuel plants. Fragments of nuclear fuel from its reprocessing were discharged to the sea. Some of them are radioactive enough to pose a significant risk to health. Surveys by divers and remote detection equipment indicate the most active particles lie in an area measuring some 60 hectares, the equivalent of almost 50 Olympic-sized swimming pools. A multi-million-pound clean-up of this area is underway to recover the significant fragments. It's the beginning of August, and the machinery that will seek out and retrieve the significant fragments arrives in harbour near Dounreay. The clean-up team is preparing the barge and carrying out final checks of the equipment that will go to work on the sea floor. Over the next few weeks, a remotely operated vehicle will move across the seabed, scanning the sediment for the radioactive signal emitted by fragments that may have lain undetected in the seabed for up to 50 years. Dounreay Site Restoration Limited awarded the contract for the work to Land and Marine. The company is working with Nuvia, which is experienced in the detection and retrieval of particles from beaches near the site. The platform for the work is a 60-metre-long barge. There's a crew of 22 who will work around the clock. How much they can achieve will depend on the weather, as much of the new equipment is about to be used for the first time. The barge has been in position now for several weeks. The remotely operated vehicle is lowered to the seabed 20 metres below in a custom-built cradle. This is the control room where staff drive the ROV over the seabed in their hunt for fragments. The ROV is similar to those used in the North Sea to carry out work around oil and gas platforms. But for this job, it needs a couple of special additions. The ROV carries radiation detection equipment that scans the seabed for the telltale signal emitted by a particle. Special instruments can distinguish the radioactivity of a fragment from the natural radioactivity of the sand and rock all around. With the ROV locked onto the signal, it manoeuvres a special recovery tool into position above the fragment. The tool pushes down and burrows into the sediment. The fragment is captured in a special chamber on board the ROV. Now, the ROV begins its journey back to the mothership. Fish follow the ROV as it heads towards the cradle on the sea floor. The driver locks the ROV into the cradle. Now it can be lifted to the surface. On the barge, one of the first tasks is to check the vehicle for radioactivity before work begins to separate the particles from the sand in the chamber.
We take the lids off the tanks, and inside each of those tanks are 7 filters. Then each of those 7 filters comes out, they check which ones have got the particles in, then they go into the segregation chamber over here, and they separate it out, so they've just got a small amount of sand with each particle, and that goes into a lead sealed box and back to Dounreay. The rest of the sand's all clean, it goes back to the seabed. It's a lot of expense, but you know, you've got to clean the environment up, and no, it's good. It's good when you get the particles and they're all coming in. We're up to 250 odd now, so it's good. I'm getting plenty of mileage in.
Great.
The weather generally has been good. The clean-up team has reached this year's target of 12.5 hectares. The weather is forecast to remain stable, so they'll carry on and see how much of the area scheduled for next year they can cover. It's October and the weather starts to break. The decision is taken to stand down the operation for this year. The team has made contact with particles on 469 occasions and recovered 429. Now, work begins to analyse the results, compare them with expert predictions, and plan the next phase of the seabed cleanup in 2011.
We started on the 7th of August and finished about mid-October. In that time we completed not only the 12.5 hectares but an additional 3.5 hectares, giving us 16 in total. We recovered 429 particles, of which 81 are termed as significant particles. These are the most hazardous ones. The particles have all been packaged up as waste, returned to the site and into the waste stream on site. Now we move into analysing the data that we've got, the spread of the particles, the depth of the particles, the activity of the particles, and produce a report on this year's operation, which will go to our independent advisory body. They will read the report and analyse the data, and they will then advise us on the scope of work for next year, what we should be doing next year and possibly the year after as well.